1776, the year our founding fathers created a nation to be remembered. They pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to build a nation where the individual is protected from the government. The concept was so innovative and bold to the status quo that Pennsylvania's Benjamin Franklin told his fellow signers that they would have to hang together or they would certainly hang separately. Let's take a few moments to see what kind of country the cooperative experiment has become.
Recently, in our modern world, many American citizens feel as if the governmental system to which they are organized under is rigged against them. The painful part is they're right. The system is rigged. Look around. Oil companies guzzle down billions in profits. Billionaires pay lower tax rates than their secretaries. And Wall Street CEOs, the same ones who wrecked our economy and destroyed millions of jobs, still strut around Congress with no shame, demanding favors and acting like they should be thanked for what they have done. Corruption does not necessarily occur behind closed doors, and yet that seems to describe what is meant to be corrupt. Debatably, most modern corruption happens in plain sight. Our first example, former Republican Senator Ted Stevens, who is from Alaska, serving from December 24, 1968 until January 3, 2009. He was the longest-serving Republican senator in history until he was opposed by a federal grand jury on 7 accounts of failing to report donations received from Vetco Corporation and its CEO, Bill Allen. Stevens was charged in accordance with remodeling work done to his home by Vetco. The total charge for his indulgences, $250,000. Senator Stevens also received $48,000 from Boeing Corporation from 2003 to 2008 in campaign contributions. Is this corrupt? Or what about the $47,000 from Verizon? Or the $45,000 from News Corp? Or the $286,000 he received from law firms? Or the $248,000 he received from lobbyists? Where was the outrage then? The answer, there was none. And this is the problem. None of that money, under the right circumstances, would be considered to be corrupt. Corporations are able to wage massive amounts of money legally with no repercussions. The reason that they fund politicians is to receive favors in the form of contracts, deregulation of business, and favorable legislation. In layman's terms, to make money for themselves at the expense of the public. The corruption is open. If he had in fact used the money from Vetco to advance his position or authority in government or to finance his political decisions, then he wouldn't be charged for any misconduct. Senator Stevens is no exclusion for the corruption in Washington. Barack Obama raised $42 million from law firms, $14 million from security investments, and $10 million from real estate. George Bush also raised $10 million from real estate and $8 million from securities in 2004. It is no marvel that both presidents have been willing to back the very people who've paid for them to be there. Rod Blagojevich is another example of how politicians and the media are willing to only demonize certain acts and not others. According to Blagojevich, I spent 20 years in politics and had no problem with performing and asking for favors. Access here, critical information there, a connection or reference or two, and keeping relative score of whom I owed and who owed me. These arrangements were never spoken of as favors per se, but the rules were understood. The very nature of building political capital is to serve others, so they will serve you better when you need them. This is political business as usual and is not necessarily illegal. Some also believe that instead of dealing with actual corruption, the media wastes time gossiping about what a politician actually intended when he or she said something.
Money isn't the only thing the government craves. Control and power is another bullet point on the list of things that corrupts politicians. When the United States was founded, it was led by its citizens, normal, everyday people like you and me. Now it's quite the opposite. The government controls a lot more things than it should. And if someone has the audacity to speak out against them or do something that it doesn't like, well, that person's in a world of hurt. For instance, if he comes over here.
Hi, Mom.
This man here loves the freedoms given to him by the Constitution. He's a patriot of the United States. He realized that the Second Amendment granted him the right to have a gun, or two. He was so excited he wanted to tell everyone what he could do. And now he's spending 15 years behind bars because of it. The government doesn't want people doing things it doesn't like. Just a sad story. Of course, I must say, it wasn't the best of ideas to express your right to bear arms in a federal bank. Just saying. Some people don't exactly see eye to eye with your enthusiasm. Best of luck to you. The government doesn't just stop at limiting what citizens can say. It now has control of schools and their kids. Kids have to be careful what they say nowadays, because anything can offend someone and then start a whole fiasco that will end up in just creating tighter laws on speech. Kids can't really even talk about their personal morals and beliefs unless they agree with what the government says. That's beyond messed up. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat,
Or like this guy. If you stop and really think about what living standards are like under today's government compared to the late 1700s, you should see that today's government is filled with messed up, power-hungry politicians who only care about money and themselves.